This is the story of a very sick woman who many people would consider evil. This is the story of Kay Letourneau and Vili Fualaau. This story is very sad, and it has more twists and turns than the final season of Succession, so viewer discretion is advised. If you're unfamiliar with this case, Vili Fualaau was 12 years old when his teacher, Kay Letourneau, who was 34 at the time, started what the press called it at the time, an affair. There are many elements to this story that make it sad. Not only the disturbing events that transpired, but also the gross mishandling of this by the press. It was the Wild West of, the tabloids, and people went nuts over this story. So let's dive in. Let me give you some history. This is Kay Letourneau. She's the fourth of 7 children, and she was brought up in a very strict, conservative Catholic household. She went to Arizona State University, where she met her husband, Steve Letourneau, and they wound up having 4 children together. Apparently, the Letourneaus didn't have a perfect marriage. They had financial problems, and they both had extramarital affairs. She worked as a teacher at Shorewood Elementary, where she would meet Vili Fualaau for the first time as his 2nd grade teacher and later as his 6th grade teacher, which is when all the stuff happened. This is Vili Fualaau. He's Samoan, and he was from a troubled home in Seattle. His dad was a piece of work. He served time in jail for robbery. He was married 5 times, and he did have a strained relationship with his mother. So he said that he thought that Mary was very pretty, and on a dare or a bet with his friends, he wanted to see if he could win her affections. And he later said that he maybe was looking for a mother figure. But he was 12 years old. I mean, at that age, a 12-year-old boy, you're going to get a knee trembler from a strong breeze, okay? But in Mary's mind, she just could not fend off the aggressions and the advances of this 12-year-old student of hers, and the pupil-teacher boundaries were crossed. In 1996, police found Kay Letourneau and Vili Fualaau in a car together with some steamy windows. She was seen jumping from the back to the front, and when they walked up to it, Vili was asleep in the back seat. How that situation could be interpreted as anything else but what it was, she was somehow able to convince the officers that everything was legit, and his mother knew that he was with her. That is white pretty privilege for you. But my goodness, if the roles were reversed and it was a grown man with a 12-year-old girl, I can't even imagine. So she got away that night, and they continued to see each other, and then rumors started that Mary was pregnant, and it wasn't her husband's, and then her husband found love letters that she had written to her 12-year-old student. The press went bonkers when it was discovered that 34-year-old Kay Letourneau was pregnant with her 12-year-old student Vili Fualaau's child. And this was the picture that was plastered everywhere, instead of protecting Vili's anonymity. And he's only 12, 13 years old, which is an incredibly confusing and formative time in a person's life. And the narrative the press was pushing was that these two were more like star-crossed lovers, and that society wasn't sophisticated enough to understand their love, and they were born at the wrong time. When the irrefutable facts are that this woman is a predator, and she set Vili's life on a course that couldn't be reversed. In fact, Kay Letourneau doubles down on the claims that she did nothing wrong, and that she had no idea that she was breaking any laws at the time. So she gets arrested, and she pleaded guilty to this. She took a plea agreement and wound up having to serve 3 months, and she had to undergo treatment, and there was a no-contact order between her and Vili Fualaau, obviously. And somehow she did not have to register as a sex offender, which was a huge mistake because almost immediately after she was released, the police caught her in a steamy car with Vili Fualaau again, honestly just 2 weeks after she was released. I forgot to add that by this time she had given birth to her first daughter. She was arrested again, and it was discovered that she was pregnant again. The judge was understandably furious and sentenced her to the maximum 6 years in prison. While in prison, she gave birth to her 6th child, but her and Vili's 2nd. Her name was Georgia, and her husband filed for divorce as well. By the way, this picture was featured in People magazine. So by the time he was 15, Vili Fualaau had 2 daughters with Kay Letourneau, a married woman of 4. who was also his second and sixth grade teacher. And this obviously deeply affected him. His mother had custody of his two children, but he did wind up dropping out of high school, and he said he suffered with alcoholism and major depression. And the psychological effects of this kind of trauma can't be understated. The effects are deep and complex, individualistic, and have long-lasting effects. His family did wind up suing the school district for emotional suffering, lost wages, and the cost of raising two children, and for failing to protect him.
When we realized, I don't know, you called me your girlfriend.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
Mary Kay Letourneau and Vili Fualaau were married in 2004 after she was released from prison when she was 43 and he was 22. They moved to Seattle to raise their two children, Audrey and Georgia. She worked as a legal clerk, and he worked in construction. They did a couple of interviews while they were married to shed light on their marriage, to show that they're like a normal couple, but all it really did was reveal how troubled their marriage was and how honestly twisted Mary Kay Letourneau is. Just listen to this.
It's just absurd to think that 13-year-olds are not having sex. And they're not pursuing it in a very deliberate, knowing way. It's absurd.
Not a lot of them are having sex with 34-year-olds.
No, but are they having sex?
But it's not relevant.
It is absolutely relevant. Are they having sex?
I don't see it as
Are
being
they having
relevant.
sex? Are they having sex?
I'm certain that they are, but how is
Okay.
that relevant to this case?
They're not children.
So should
I mean,
You don't know him.
No, but I don't need to know him in this discussion. He's the child.
Who was
I'm
the
talking
boss?
about you.
Who was the boss?
What was his name?
Who was the boss?
What?
Who was the boss back then?
was me pursuing you, but
Who was the boss back then?
this is ridiculous.
No,
This is
who was?
ridiculous.
Who was? Just say.
Just say.
Who was the boss?
All I knew was what I knew back then.
But who was the boss?
He was 13, Mary.
But who was the boss?
This is getting weird.
Who was the boss?
that whole interview is available on YouTube, and there are other ones, but I found this one specifically disturbing. It's just such a interesting insight into her delusional thinking, where she maintains that she didn't do anything wrong. She didn't think she broke any laws, that Vili was the pursuer, and I'm surprised she didn't pull a muscle with all the mental gymnastics she did to get there. And Vili's reaction to some of the things, you can just see his soul leaving his body, and it just makes me so sad for him. The two of them did wind up getting divorced in 2019, and Mary Kay Letourneau passed away from colon cancer in 2020. And Vili Fualaau was by her side when she took her last breath. Mary Kay Letourneau's behavior had devastating consequences for so many lives, but especially Vili Fualaau's. And I'll leave you with his words now that he's gained the insight and perspective that only age can bring.
Well, I'd probably go and seek some help. I couldn't look at a 13-year-old and, be attracted to that.